As she scrubbed a stubborn stain from a plate, the faint thump of bass drifted down from upstairs. Her stepson, Ethan Wason, his room as usual, lost in his music at 22. Ethan was a study in contrast, confident yet shy, bold in his opinions, but hesitant in moments of vulnerability. Emily had watched him grow from a lanky teenager into a young man with sharp features and a quiet intensity. Their relationship was warm, but understated, built on small gestures, a shared laugh over, a bad movie, a quick chat about his college classes or her slipping an extra sandwich into his lunch when he stayed. Late at the community college, she cherished these moments, though she never said it aloud today with the house so still. She felt an urge to connect to bridge the gap that sometimes yawned between them, drying her hands. Emily poured herself a glass of iced tea. The cool liquid, a brief respite from the warmth. Seeping through the window, she leaned against the counter, gazing out at the backyard where dandelions swayed. In the breeze, the tranquility should have soothed her. But instead it amplified the restless hum in her veins. She couldn't sit still, setting the glass down. She decided to check on Ethan. His music grew louder as she climbed the stairs, a pulsing beat that seemed to vibrate. Through the walls, his door was slightly ajar, a sliver of lat spilling into the hallway. She paused, her hand hovering near the knob. Should she knock? Walk away? Curiosity tugged at her, a whisper of something she couldn't name. Ethan, she called softly, her voice barely carrying over the music. No response. She nudged, the door open a fraction, just enough to peek inside. What she saw stopped her. Cold Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, his posture relaxed yet focused, his hands moving with deliberate care. His brow was furrowed, his gaze fixed downward. It took a heartbeat for Emily to realize what was happening, an intimate moment. Private and unguarded, her breath caught a flush creeping up her neck. She should turn away, she knew it, but her feet felt glued to the floor. The afternoon light bathed the room in a soft glow, highlighting the curve of Ethan's shoulders, the unguarded vulnerability in his expression. It was mesmerizing, not because of what he was doing, but because of the raw authenticity of the moment before she could retreat. Ethan's head snapped up. Their eyes locked through the narrow gap, and the door time seemed to freeze. His face shifted from surprise to a mix of embarrassment and uncertainty. His hands still, and Emily's heart pounded, her mouth dry. She tried to speak, to apologize, but words failed her. Ethan moved first, grabbing a blanket to cover himself, his cheeks flaming red. "Two didn't know you were there." He stammered, his voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry," Emily blurted, stepping back, her own face burning. I didn't mean to. Her words tumbled out, frantic, but Ethan shook his head, raising a hand as if to stop her. "It's okay," he said quickly, though his voice quavered. "Just give me a minute." She nodded, retreating to the hallway, her mind a whirlwind. Her pulse raced as she gripped the banister, trying to steady herself. She should have knocked, she should have walked away, but the image of a Thanupan so human lingered, stirring something deep within her. It wasn't just the awkwardness of the moment. It was the glimpse into his inner world. A side hairily showed. She stood there, grappling, with a mix of guilt, curiosity, and an emotion. She couldn't quite name. The creak of Ethan's door broke her reverie. He stepped into the hallway. His dark hair tasseled his usual t-shirt and shorts, doing little to mask the tension in his posture. He avoided her gaze, leaning against the door frame. "Sorry about that." He mumbled, his voice soft. "Didn't mean for you to see that." "No, I'm sorry." Emily said, her voice steadier. "Now I should have knocked, it slipped my mind." He nodded, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes met before he looked away. "Guess we're even now," he said with a nervous chuckle. "Remember last summer you forgot to lock the bathroom door?" The memory hit her like a wave, and she felt her cheeks flush again. She'd been mortified at the time, but they'd laughed it off, brushing it aside. "You've got a point," she said, managing a small laugh. The shared memory eased the tension, pulling them back to the familiar comfort of their bond. But beneath the laughter, Emily sensed a shift, a subtle undercurrent that hadn't been there. Before they stood in silence for a moment, the air heavy with unspoken thoughts. Emily wanted to retreat to give Ethan space, but his hesitant glances kept her rooted. There was something in his eyes. Uncertainty, yes, but also a search for a connection. She took a breath, her voice softer than intended. Do you want to talk about it? Ethan's eyes widened, a flush creeping up his neck. Talk about what? He asked, his tone lap, but laced with nerves. She smiled gently, trying to ease the moment. Anything, you don't have to, but I thought it might help. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor as he rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know, he said after a pause, embarrassment flickering across his face. It's just weird, you know? Emily took a cautious step closer, her voice warm. Hey, it's okay to feel embarrassed. Everyone has those moments. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Not everyone gets caught by their stepmom. She chuckled, softly surprised when his smile widened. In response, fair enough, she said, leaning against the opposite wall, mirroring his stance. But trust me, I've had my share of awkward moments. You're not alone. Ethan looked up, his expression softening. You always seem so put together, like you've got it all figured out. His words caught her off guard, stirring a warmth she hadn't expected. I'm not as together as you think, she admitted, her voice quieter. I felt lost plenty of times. He studied her, his brows lifting slightly. It's just, you're different from Dad. Not in a bad way, just different. Unsure how to respond. Emily nodded. Being different can be a good thing, sometimes. Yeah, Ethan said after a beat, his tone thoughtful. I guess it can. The silence that followed felt lighter, the tension in Ethan's shoulders easing. He apologized again, but Emily waved it off, assuring him it wasn't a big deal. She meant it. She just wanted to make sure he was okay. But as they talked, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. A quiet change that lingered in the air. As evening fell, Emily sank onto the couch, a book in hand, hoping to escape the swirl of her thoughts. But the words blurred, her mind drifting back to Ethan's room. To the vulnerability in his eyes, she told herself. It was just an awkward moment, something they'd moved past. Yet, the harder she tried to dismiss it, the more it clung to her like a melody she couldn't unhear. Footsteps on the stairs pulled her from her thoughts. Ethan appeared, his hair mussed, his expression uncertain. Hey, he said, pausing at the bottom of the stairs. I'm making tea. Want some? The simple offer warmed her, and she nodded. That would be great. Thanks. In the kitchen, Ethan moved, with quiet purpose, filling the kettle and setting out mugs. Emily leaned against the counter, watching him. The whistle of the kettle filled the silence, a soothing backdrop to the unspoken tension. Still want honey? He asked, glancing over his shoulder. Yeah, please. Ah, she said, her voice soft. He handed her a mug, settling across from her. The steam curled between them, and for a moment neither spoke. Then Ethan broke the quiet, his voice steady but earnest. I've been thinking about what you said about not needing to meet everyone's expectations. Emily set her mug down, her hands trembling slightly. What about it? He looked at her, his eyes searching. It's hard to believe sometimes. I feel like I've spent my whole life trying to be what others want. I don't know how to stop. His words hit her deeply, and she leaned forward, her voice gentle. Ethan, it's okay to not have it all figured out. You're still learning who you are, and that's normal. You don't need to have all the answers. Now he nodded, slowly, his gaze meeting hers. What if I'm scared? Scared I won't lack who I am without all that. Her throat tightened at the raw honesty in his voice. It's okay to be scared, she said, her voice wavering. But you're stronger than you. Take it one step at a time and trust you'll find your way. A faint smile touched his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. You make it sound easy, it's not, She admitted, her own smile tinged with sadness. But you're not alone, I'm here. For a moment, nothing else mattered. Ethan's gaze held hers steady, encircling his vulnerability, almost tangible. Thanks, he murmured, his voice barely audible. No need to thank me, she said softly. That's what family's for. They sat in silence, the weight of unspoken thoughts lingering. Ethan finished his tea and stood his movements. Hesitant. I should probably head tubed, he said, though his tone carried a trace of doubt. Good night, Ethan, she replied, her voice soft. He paused, his eyes lingering on her for a heartbeat. Before he climbed the stairs, Emily stayed in the kitchen, her mind a tangle of emotions, concern, affection, and something deeper she couldn't name. As she lay in bed later, the quiet amplified, her racing thoughts she couldn't shake, the image of Ethan's expression the way. His eyes held hers. Restless, she rose her feet, carrying her to his room before she could second-guess herself. His door was ajar, a soft glow spilling into the hallway. She hesitated, then heard his, voice low and uncertain. Come in, she stepped inside, finding Ethan on the edge of his bed. His hands, clasped in his lap, shadows circled his eyes, betraying sleeplessness. Can't sleep? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. He shook, his head offering a tired smile. Too much. On my mind, I guess. She nodded, understanding all too well the silence, stretched, heavy, but not uncomfortable, then spoke first, his voice cutting through the quiet. I keep thinking about what you said about not needing to be what others expect. She closed the door and sat beside him, her heart pounding. What about it? He looked at his hands, his voice soft. It's hard to accept. I've spent so long trying to please everyone. I don't know how to change that. Her hand rested on his arm, a gesture of comfort. You don't have to figure it all out. Now, it's okay to take it slow. He met her gaze, his eyes brimming with doubt and something deeper. What if I don't know who I am without all that? Her heart ached at his words. You're still you. Ethan, those expectations don't define you. You're more than that, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. He smiled, faintly, wistful. You make it seem so easy. It's not, she confessed, her voice a whisper. But it's not impossible. You're stronger than you think. The silence that followed felt intimate, their closeness, a quiet anchor. Thanks, Ethan said, his voice steady, but heavy with emotion. You don't have to thank me, she replied. Her tone firm yet gentle. Ethan shifted his hand, brushing hers, fleeting touch that sent a shiver through her. I don't know what I'd do without you, he said, his voice soft, his gaze lingering on their hands. You'll never have to find out, she said, her voice steady. Their eyes met, the air thick with anticipation. Ethan's gaze was intense, searching, and Emily felt her pulse quicken. She should have looked away, said something to lighten the mood, but she couldn't. His hand grazed hers again, and this time neither pulled away. The contact was electric, her skin tingling. You've always been there for me, Ethan murmured, his voice rich with emotion. Even when I didn't know how to ask for help, I don't think I've ever told you how much that means. His words washed over her, tightening her throat. Ethan, she said, her voice trembling. You don't need to. Say that you've always mattered to me. I just want you to be happy. His smile was wistful. I don't know what happiness looks like for me yet, but when I'm with you, it feels possible. Her heart twisted at his honesty. She wanted to comfort him, to promise everything would be okay, but words failed her instead. She reached out, their fingers curling around his. Ethan's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and something unreadable. I don't want to mess this up, he whispered. You won't, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Let me help you for a moment. They were still, the air heavy with unspoken words. Then Ethan leaned in, his movements tentative, as if expecting her to pull away. She didn't. His lips brushed, her soft and hesitant, a kiss that sent warmth flooding through her. Her hand rested on his arm, the other grazing his jaw, feeling the faint stubble beneath her. Fingers, the world faded, leaving only the gentle press of his lips, the steady rhythm of her heart, and the unspoken bond between them when they parted. Their foreheads touched, emotion, swirling confusion, fear, but also a radiant warmth. And then she began, her voice a whisper. "I know," he said, his voice trembling. "It's not simple. I just needed you to know how I feel." Her hands rested on his arms, steadying them both. "We can't rush this," she said softly. "We have to think about what this means." "I'm not, he said, his eyes earnest. "I've tried to ignore this, to push it away, but it's there. You're the one person I can be myself with." His sincerity stirred a mix of guilt and longing. "I care about you, Ethan," she said, her voice shaken. "But we have to be careful. We need to figure this out. Slowly." He nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Don't want to lose this, whatever it is. It doesn't have to go away." And she said, her hands fall into her lap. "But we need to be cautious." Ethan's expression softened, a mix of resolve and vulnerability. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said quietly. A faint smile touched her lips. "We'll find a way." The tension in the room eased, replaced by a quiet understanding as Emily stood. To leave, Ethan's fingers brushed hers. A silent promise. She squeezed his hand gently before stepping into the hallway. The air feeling lighter back in her room, hope flickered amidst the uncertainty. The road ahead would be challenging, but they'd face it together. The next morning, Emily sat at the kitchen table, a notebook opened before her. She'd started jotting down thoughts, not just about Ethan, but about herself. The moment had sparked something, a realization that she too had been living for others, expectations. She wrote about boundaries, about the importance of self-discovery, and how love in any form required care and respect. It was a lesson she wanted to share, not just with Ethan, but with anyone navigating the messy edges of human connection. If you're moved by this story, join us on our journey. Subscribe to Broken Vows on YouTube for more tales of love, loss, and learning. Share your thoughts in the comment show. Do you navigate boundaries in your own life? Let's learn together.